There's something hauntingly beautiful about the way legends linger in the air, like the fading embers of an ancient fire. Can you feel it? The weight of centuries pressing down on the ruins of a forgotten city, where every crumbling stone tells a story of fear and flame. Tonight, we step into one of Middle-earth's most chilling tales, the rise of Glaurung, the first of the fire-breathing dragons, a creature whose very name still echoes with power and dread. Whether you're curled up under blankets or listening beneath a sky full of stars, we'd love to know where your journey into this story begins. Tell us in the comments, what time is it where you are, and what draws you to the mysteries of Middle-earth tonight. Picture this, a lone traveler, their cloak dusted with ash, standing at the edge of a broken city. The ground beneath their feet is scorched black, as if the earth itself still remembers the dragon's wrath. This is where Glaurung's shadow once fell, where his fiery breath turned kingdoms to rubble. But how did such a creature come to be? What dark forces stirred in the depths of Angband to unleash him upon the world? The answers lie buried in the whispers of the ancient forests, in the cracks of these ruined walls, and in the courage of those who dare to face him. This isn't just a story about a dragon. It's a tale of ambition, of darkness, clawing its way into the light, and of the fragile hope that flickers even in the deepest shadows. As we unravel Glaurung's legend together, you'll feel the heat of his breath, hear the thunder of his wings, and witness the moment Middle-earth changed forever. So settle in, let the weight of the past wrap around you like a cloak, and prepare to step into a world where myth and history collide. The fire is burning low, the night is deep, and the story of Glaurung is about to unfold. Deep within the bowels of Angband, where the air itself burns with the stench of sulfur and despair, something monstrous stirs in the shadows. The walls of Morgoth's fortress tremble as hammers strike molten metal, each blow echoing like a heartbeat through the caverns. Balrogs, their whip-like flames lashing the darkness, bend their twisted strength to a terrible purpose, forging the first scales of a beast unlike any Middle-earth has ever known. Can you hear it? The slow, shuddering breath of something waking in the deep. Morgoth leans over the half-formed creature, his voice a venomous whisper as he weaves spells of hatred into its very bones. Every syllable drips with malice, every word a chain to bind Glaurung's will to his own, and then silence, a pause, a single searing gasp as the dragon's lungs fill for the first time and the cavern erupts in flame. Golden eyes slit open, gleaming with a cunning no animal should possess. This is no mindless beast. Glaurung's gaze locks onto his master, and Morgoth smiles. Not with pride, not with joy, but with the cold satisfaction of a craftsman who has just unleashed ruin upon the world. The fire that spills from Glaurung's jaws isn't merely heat, it's hunger. A hunger for cities to crumble, for heroes to falter, for the very light of the world to dim beneath his shadow. Yet even in this moment of triumph, there's a whisper of something darker. Morgoth doesn't see it, too consumed by his own victory. But Glaurung's intelligence burns brighter than his flames. This dragon isn't just a weapon, he's a will waiting to be unleashed. And the first embers of his legend have already begun to spread. The ground trembles as Angband's iron gates groan open, a sound like the world itself splitting at the seams. Then silence, a heartbeat of dreadful anticipation, and suddenly, the night explodes in fire as Glorung surges into the open sky, his wings unfurling like a storm cloud, blotting out the stars. Below, Elven scouts freeze mid-step, their lanterns slipping from numb fingers. No warning could have prepared them. No legend could have captured the sheer scale of him. The way his scales glint like molten bronze, the way his breath turns the very air into a furnace. Screams rise from the nearest village as the first tongues of flame lick at rooftops. Glorung doesn't merely destroy, he savors. He circles once, twice, watching the panic unfold beneath him like a child toying with ants. His laughter rumbles across the land, deeper than any thunder, as thatched homes crumble into glowing embers. The heat is so intense it warps the air, turning fleeing figures into shimmering ghosts before they vanish into smoke. Amid the chaos, a young elf named Kalanan stumbles over the body of a fallen sentry, the man's silver hair still smoldering. His hands shake as he presses them to the scorched earth, feeling the residual warmth of Glorung's passing. This isn't just an attack, it's an ending, a message, and yet, as the dragon's shadow sweeps over him again, something brittle and bright ignites in Kalanan's chest. Not courage, not yet, but the seed of it, the desperate, foolish refusal to let this be the last dawn his people ever see. He doesn't know how to slay a dragon. Doesn't know if such a thing is even possible. But as Glorung's flames paint the horizon in shades of hell, Kalanan whispers a vow to the wind, one that will carry him into the darkest corners of Middle-earth, chasing rumors of forgotten weapons and lost magic. The dragon thinks himself unstoppable. The elf knows better. For every fire, there is water. For every shadow, a spark. And somewhere, buried in the ashes of this night, lies the first thread of Glorung's undoing. The great hall of the Elven King is shrouded in an unnatural quiet, broken only by the distant echo of Glorung's wings beating against the horizon. The lords of the Eldar sit in a circle of fading light, their once radiant armor now dulled by ash and despair. Maps sprawl across the stone table, each marked with the smoldering ruins of their fallen strongholds. One by one, they speak voices hollow with grief, yet sharp with resolve. There is no debate left, only the terrible certainty that no army, no fortress, no blade can stand against the dragon's fury. Then, from the shadows of the hall, a single figure steps forward. Kalanan, his cloak still singed from the night he first witnessed Glorung's wrath, places a hand upon the table. His fingers trace the jagged line of the Erd Gorgoroth, the haunted mountains that loom over Angband's northern gates. The dragon's strength comes from Morgoth's will. He murmurs, "Break that bond, even for a moment," and Glorung becomes flesh and flame, no more, no less. The eldest among them, a silver-haired lord whose eyes have seen the fall of 100 battles, shakes his head. No living thing has walked those paths and returned, he warns. The very air is poison. The rocks whisper madness. To enter Angband is to offer your soul to the darkness. But Kalanan's gaze doesn't waver. He reaches into his tunic and draws forth a small, luminous stone, a fragment of the very stars that once lit the elves' first awakening. "Then let the darkness remember," he says softly, "that light was here first." A murmur ripples through the council. The plan is madness, a fool's hope. Yet as the torches gutter in the draft, something shifts in the air. Not courage, not yet, but the quiet, ferocious weight of a choice already made. The lords rise one by one and place their hands upon Kalanan's shoulders. No oaths are sworn, no tears are shed. There is only the unspoken truth that this moment will echo through the ages, whether he returns or not. As the council disperses, the young elf stands alone before the maps, tracing the hidden paths with a fingertip. Somewhere beyond those cursed peaks, Morgoth sits upon his throne of iron, unaware that the smallest spark, one he deemed too feeble to extinguish, has just begun to burn its way toward him. The tunnels swallow them whole, the feeble glow of their lanterns barely scratching the surface of the endless dark. Kalanan's breath fogs in the frigid air as he steps over bones, some ancient, some frightfully new, scattered across the jagged stone. The walls seem to pulse, slick with something thicker than moisture, as if the mountain itself bleeds from the weight of Morgoth's corruption. Behind him, the soft clink of armor betrays his companion's unease. No one speaks. Words feel too heavy here, too likely to wake whatever slumbers in the deeper black. A whisper slithers past Kalanan's ear, not in any tongue he knows, but in something older, something that coils around his thoughts like smoke. He freezes, one hand raised to halt the others. The silence that follows is worse than the sound. It's the silence of a predator holding its breath. Then, faint but unmistakable, the scrape of scales against rock. Far below, something shifts. The air warms by degrees, carrying with it the acrid tang of charred flesh. Glorung's scent. One of the elves, a young archer with eyes too wide for bravery, reaches for his bow. Kalanan catches his wrist. Not here, he mouths. The dragon's presence is a web stretched thin through these tunnels. One vibration, one misplaced sound, and the strands will tremble straight to his awareness. They move like ghosts now, each footfall deliberate, each exhale measured. The lanterns dim further, as if the light itself is afraid. Ahead, the tunnel splits. One path sloping downward into a throat of shimmering heat, the other twisting upward into a labyrinth of jagged stalactites. The choice is an illusion. Both ways reek of sulfur. Both hum with the same low, resonant growl, the sound of a beast dreaming of ruin. Kalanan closes his eyes, pressing his palm to the stone. The mountain thrums beneath his touch, a slow, sick heartbeat. Somewhere in that rhythm, faint as a dying echo, he feels it, a thread of cold, clean air. A way through, the others don't question when he turns toward the heat. They know, as he does, that the only path to Glorung's weakness lies through the heart of his strength. The air thickens with every step, clinging to their skin like a second cloak. The whispers return, louder now, threading through their minds with promises of retreat, of mercy, if they only turn back. Kalanan tightens his grip on the star fragment at his chest. Its light doesn't brighten. It deepens, pulsing in time with his own resolve, a silent reminder that even here, in the belly of despair, the first light never truly faded. Then, without warning, the tunnel widens into a cavern, so vast their lanterns fail to touch the ceiling. The ground falls away into a chasm, its edges lined with the skeletal remains of creatures not meant for this world. And there, curled around a pillar of blackened rock, like a serpent around a branch, lies Glorung's shadow, not the dragon himself, but the imprint of his passage, scorched into the stone. The air quivers with remembered fire. Kalanan's fingers brush the hilt of his dagger. Not yet, not here, but soon, the shadow may linger, but the beast is near. And where there is fire, there must also be ash. The air grows heavier, thick with the scent of burnt metal and something older, the sharp, coppery tang of fear. Kalanan's fingers tighten around the star fragment at his chest, its light flickering like a heartbeat, but the darkness isn't just pressing in around them now. It's slithering into them, a voice, velvet smooth and poison sweet, curls through their minds, whispering secrets they never spoke aloud. Do you truly trust him? It murmurs to the archer at Kalanan's side. He led you here to die. Look how his hands shake. The lantern light wavers as the first elf turns, his blade glinting in the gloom, not toward the tunnel ahead, but toward his own kin. His eyes are glassy, unfocused, as if staring at something only he can see. You've been plotting with Morgoth. He snarls at the warrior beside him. The accusation hangs in the air, rotten and wrong, but the dragon's voice has already sunk its teeth deep. Kalanan tries to shout, to break the spell, but the words crumble in his throat. Glorung's influence isn't a fire to outrun. It's a fog, seeping into every thought, twisting memory into nightmare. The archer's bow creaks as he draws an arrow, his aim unsteady but deadly. You've always envied me, he hisses at another. The cavern echoes with the sound of steel scraping free, of friendships splintering under the weight of lies. And then, a flicker. The star fragment flares against Kalanan's skin, not with light, but with a sensation like icy water dashed across his face. The dragon's voice recoils, just for an instant, and in that sliver of clarity, he understands. Glorung's greatest weapon isn't his flame. It's the way he turns their own hearts against them, feeding on doubt like a starving beast. The young elf staggers forward, pressing the star stone into the archer's palm. The moment it touches skin, the other elf gasps, his eyes clearing as if waking from a dream. It's him, Kalanan rasps. He's making us see what isn't there. The others still waver, caught between truth and illusion, but the spell is cracking. Glorung's voice rises to a furious hiss, the walls trembling with his rage. He didn't expect them to fight back, not like this, not together. Somewhere in the depths, the dragon stirs, his patience fraying. The game has changed. And for the first time, since the shadows swallowed them whole, Kalanan smiles. A trap only works if the prey doesn't know it's walking into one. Now they do. The last torch gutters out with a hiss, plunging the tunnel into absolute blackness. Kalanan's breath comes in ragged gasps as he presses his back against the damp stone, listening to the distant, mocking echo of Glorung's laughter. Around him, his companions lie broken, not by fang or flame, but by the dragon's cruelest weapon, the slow unraveling of their own minds. One by one, they turned on each other, their final words choked with accusations spat through clenched teeth. Now only silence remains, thick and suffocating, as the mountain's weight presses down, but silence can be deceiving. Somewhere ahead, beyond the maze of twisting passages, the air hums with heat. Glorung knows he's coming, wants him to come. The realization should terrify Kalanan, yet as his fingers brush the empty sheath at his side, a memory surfaces, not of despair, but of something his grandfather once whispered by firelight. A story of Gondolin, the hidden city, and the sword it birthed in its final hours, Glamdring, Orcrist, and one more, a blade so fierce its name was struck from all records, forged for a single purpose, to pierce scales no other metal could touch. The tale had always seemed like myth, but myths, Kalanan realizes as his boot crunches over a scattering of ancient bones, often grow from seeds of truth. The ruins of Gondolin lie not 2 days' march from these very tunnels, if one dares the pass of Cirith Thornath, where the eagles still nest. His hand drifts to the star fragment at his throat, its light dim but steady. Perhaps it's no accident that of all his company, he alone resisted Glorung's whispers. Perhaps some debts linger between stars and steel. A sudden tremor shakes the mountain, dislodging showers of pebbles. The dragon grows impatient. Kalanan pushes forward, each step heavier than the last, yet his mind has never been clearer. He knows the odds, knows that even if the blade exists, finding it in time is near impossible. But as the tunnel slopes upward toward a faint, sulphurous glow, a strange calm settles over him. Glaurung expects a desperate elf, half mad with grief. He won't expect one who's just remembered how to hope. The heat intensifies, searing his lungs with every breath. Somewhere beyond the next turn, the cavern opens into the dragon's lair. Kalanan pauses, pressing his forehead to the stone, and lets the mountain's ancient pulse steady him. One last gamble, one final thread of light in the dark. And as the first flicker of firelight licks at the tunnel walls, he does the one thing Glorung will never anticipate. He smiles. The ruins stretch before him like the bones of a fallen giant, the moonlight painting silver veins across the broken arches. Kalanan steps over a toppled statue, its face worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain, yet still wearing an expression of silent defiance. The air here tastes different, not of sulfur, but of memory, thick with the echoes of songs that once rang through these streets. His boots sink into moss as thick as a burial shroud, and for a moment, the weight of all those lost years presses down on him. Then a glint, faint as a dying star, but unmistakable. Half buried beneath a tangle of roots lies the hilt of a sword, its pommel blackened by time, but still bearing the delicate tracery of elven craft. He kneels, brushing away the dirt with fingers that tremble, not from fear, but from the sheer impossibility of it. The runes along the broken blade glow faintly at his touch, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Narthank. The name slithers into his mind, not as a word, but as a sensation, cold steel against fire, a whisper of winter in the heart of a furnace. A gust of wind stirs the leaves, and with it comes a voice so thin, it might be the wind itself. You are not the first to seek me. Kalanan whirls, but the ruins remain empty. Only the shadows move, stretching long and lean between the pillars. Nor will you be the last. The voice continues, closer now. A shape flickers at the edge of vision, a figure in tattered robes, their face blurred as if seen through smoke. The ghost of a smith, perhaps, or the echo of the one who last wielded this blade. The metal remembers, the specter murmurs, drifting toward a crumbled forge where the embers still glow faintly after all these years. But fire alone will not wake it. The sword drank deep of dragon blood once. It hungers for it again. Kalanan's grip tightens around the hilt. The shard of star stone at his throat flares in response, casting jagged shadows across the ruins. He understands now. This isn't just a weapon. It's a covenant, a promise made in the old days, when elves and dragons were new to the world, and neither knew fear. To reforge Narthank, He must give it what it craves, not just heat, but the essence of the very beast it was made to slay. Somewhere in the distance, beyond the mountains, Glaurung's laughter rumbles like approaching thunder. The ghost watches, silent, as Kalanan lifts the broken blade toward the moon. The runes flicker once, twice, then fade. The message is clear. The sword will wake when its purpose is near. And the dragon is coming. The path to the dwarfs forge winds through knife-edged cliffs, where the wind howls like a dying beast. Kalanan's fingers bleed as he claws his way up the final ledge, the broken sword strapped to his back like a guilty secret. Below him, the valley yawns wide and empty, stripped of life by something far hungrier than winter. The scent of hot metal guides him, a thread of smoke curling from a crack in the mountainside, so narrow he must turn sideways to pass through. Inside, the air shimmers with heat and the rhythmic clang of hammer on anvil. The dwarf doesn't turn as Kalanan enters. His shoulders, broad as oak roots, tense beneath a leather apron scored with ancient burns. Out, he grunts, the word landing like a stone between them. The elf doesn't move. Instead, he draws Narthank from its wrappings, the fractured blade catching the firelight in jagged streaks. The silence that follows is thicker than the mountain's bones. The dwarf's hammer slips from his grip, ringing against the stone floor as he turns. His beard, woven with iron beads, trembles as he reaches out, not for the sword, but for the scar that twists across his own forearm in a mirror of the blade's ruinous cracks. Where, he rasps, voice raw as fresh forged steel. Did you find this? Kalanan meets his gaze. The dwarf's eyes hold no warmth, only the smoldering embers of a grief 5 centuries old. Gondolin, the elf whispers, where it fell. A log collapses in the furnace, sending up a shower of sparks. The dwarf's laugh is bitter as iron filings. You walk in here with a corpse and ask me to make it breathe again. His fingers hover over the blade, tracing the runes as if reading Braille. Then, so quiet Kalanan barely catches it. My grandfather died hammering this steel. The confession hangs between them, heavy with unspoken history. Outside, the wind stills. The mountain holds its breath. The dwarf's hands gnarled and blackened by countless fires, close around the hilt. 3 days, he says at last. 3 days to wake the old magic in this metal. And when I light the forge with dragon iron, every scaled beast from here to Ang will feel it burn. He jerks his chin toward the cave mouth, where the first stars prick through the gathering dark. Best say your farewells to the sky, elf. By the time this is done, Glorung will come hunting. And not just for the sword. Kalanan nods, pressing his palm to the dwarf's soot-stained wrist. No oaths, no promises, only the understanding that some fires, once lit, cannot be undone. As the first hammer falls, the mountain itself seems to shudder, not in fear, but in recognition. The smith's song rises with the flames, a low, thunderous chant in a tongue older than kingdoms. And deep in the east, beneath a sky choked with smoke, something golden and terrible lifts its head. The mountain groans as the dwarf's hammer falls, each strike sending tremors through the stone like a drumbeat calling war. Sweat rivers down the smith's brow, his muscles corded with the strain of bending metal older than kings. The forge fire isn't just heat now. It's a living thing, writhing blue and white, as if fed by the very breath of dragons. And perhaps it is. The dragon iron ingot glows like a piece of the sun, its edges shimmering with veins of gold. melting into the broken blade, as though drawn by some ancient hunger. Narthank drinks it in, the cracks in its steel sealing with a sound like ice breaking in spring. Outside the cave, the wind dies. The world holds its breath. Then, a scream splits the sky, so vast it shakes loose a rain of pebbles from the cliffs. Kalanan's bow is in his hands before he's even aware of moving, the arrows fletching brushing his cheek as he draws. He doesn't need to see to know. Glorung is coming. The air curdles with the stench of burning pitch. A shadow blots out the sun, vast and sinuous, wings spread like a storm front. The dragon doesn't land. He circles, slow and taunting, his underbelly gleaming like oil on water. When he speaks, the words aren't heard with ears. They slither into the mind, cold as a dagger between ribs. Little thief, Glorung croons. Did you think I wouldn't smell my own blood in that steel? Kalanan's fingers tighten on the bowstring. He could loose the arrow now. It would do nothing, but the dwarf's chant behind him rises to a roar, the hammer's rhythm feverish. The sword is waking. Glorung's laughter shakes the mountain. You've brought me a gift, he purrs, a blade that remembers me, how kind. Fire gathers in his throat, a slow, sickly glow pulsing behind his teeth. Kalanan doesn't flinch. He's seen this before. The way the dragon savors fear like wine. But this time, something is different. The star fragment at his throat burns cold, and the half-mended sword behind him thrums in answer, its song a thread of silver in the dark. The first fireball streaks toward the cave mouth. Kalanan's arrow meets it midair, the shaft exploding into ash, but the force of the blast sends him skidding back across stone. His palms scrape raw, yet he's already rising, already knocking another arrow. Glorung's golden eyes narrow. He expected panic, begging, not this quiet, relentless defiance. Inside the forge, the dwarf's voice cracks on the final note of his chant. The hammer falls one last time, and Narthank screams. The sound is neither metal nor magic, but something older than both. It splits the sky, a shriek so piercing the very rocks seem to bleed. Glorung reels back, his wings beating wildly, his claws scraping furrows in the cliffside. For the first time since the war began, the dragon looks uncertain. The dwarf staggers from the forge, the sword held aloft. Its blade is no longer broken, no longer dull. It's a river of cold light, its edge humming with a promise written in the bones of the earth. Try your fire now, worm, the dwarf spits, thrusting the hilt toward Kalanan. The elf's fingers close around it. The moment skin meets steel, the world goes silent. The sword doesn't feel like a weapon in his grip. It feels like a handshake. Like a vow, Glorung's snarl is almost elegant in its fury. You think a reforged toy frightens me, he hisses, coiling to strike. Kalanan doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. The blade's song is rising again, softer now, a whisper sliding between Glorung's scales like a secret. The dragon hesitates, and in that hesitation, the mountain breathes. The ground shudders as Glorung's massive body slams into the mountainside, his claws tearing through rock like wet parchment. Dust and debris rain down as the cavern walls groan in protest, the very stones screaming under the dragon's fury. Kalanan stumbles, the newly forged sword Narthank, glistening in his grip like a sliver of captured moonlight. Behind him, the dwarf sags against a boulder, his breath coming in ragged, wet gasps. Blood seeps through his apron, staining the leather black. "Go," the smith rasps, shoving the elf forward with a hand that trembles not from fear, but from exhaustion. His eyes, though clouded with pain, burn with the same fire that once tempered the blade. Strike true, and when you do, a cough racks his body, but his grip on Kalanan's arm is iron. Make sure he feels it. The dragon's roar echoes through the tunnels, closer now, the heat of his breath curling around the corners like a living thing. Kalanan opens his mouth, to argue, to refuse, but the dwarf's expression stops him cold. There's no plea in those eyes, only a craftsman's satisfaction, the quiet pride of knowing his work will outlast him. Then the ceiling collapses. Stone and smoke explode between them, the force of it hurling Kalanan backward as the passage seals with a finality that echoes in his bones. For a heartbeat, there's silence. Then Glaurung's laughter, rich and venomous, slithers through the cracks in the rock. "Run, little elf," the dragon coos. "Run until your legs break. It won't matter." The sword thrums in Kalanan's hands, its weight both foreign and familiar, as if it's been waiting for him longer than he's been alive. The star fragment at his throat pulses in answer, casting jagged shadows across the tunnel ahead. There's no time to mourn, no time to think, only the raw, pounding truth that every step forward is a step towards something older than fear. Somewhere beyond the labyrinth of stone, Glorung moves again, his scales scraping against the mountain, like a knife dragged across bone. Kalanan tightens his grip on Narthank and runs, not away from the fire, but into it. The dragon wants a chase. Let him learn what happens when prey turns hunter. The wind howls across the cliff's edge, carrying with it the scent of charred earth and something sharper, the acrid tang of dragon venom. Kalanan's boots scrape against loose stone as he steps into the open, the sky above a churning canvas of smoke and crimson. Glorung's shadow passes over him once, twice, each sweep of those vast wings stirring the air into a furnace's breath. Then, with a thunderous crack of displaced stone, the dragon lands. The impact sends fissures racing through the rock, but Kalanan doesn't stagger. He plants his feet, Narthank's hilt warm in his grip, its blade casting jagged reflections across Glorung's scales. The dragon's golden eyes narrow, their slit pupils dilating with something darker than amusement. A leaf before the storm, he murmurs, the words curling like smoke from his jaws. "Tell me, little one, do you weep for the trees when autumn comes?" Kalanan's fingers twitch. The sword thrums against his palm, not with fear, but with recognition. It remembers this creature, hungers for him. "I weep for nothing," the elf replies, his voice steady despite the fire pooling in Glaurung's throat. Least of all a worm who hides behind his master's shadow. The insult lands like a blade. Glaurung's tail lashes, sending boulders tumbling into the abyss below. "You dare, I dare," Kalanan interrupts, lifting Narthank until its point gleams between them. "Because I've seen the truth. Morgoth's chains may be strong, but they're not unbreakable. And you," he tilts his head, feigning a curiosity he doesn't feel. "You're just another link." For a heartbeat, the dragon goes utterly still. Then the world erupts in flame. Kalanan rolls as the fireball sears past, the heat singing his cloak to ash. He comes up swinging, Narthank's edge biting deep into Glaurung's foreleg, not enough to cripple, but enough to make the beast roar. The sound shakes the mountain, but beneath it, something else pulses. A vibration, a rhythm, the sword's song, rising to meet the dragon's fury. Glorung recoils, his snarl twisting into something uncertain. He's felt this before. Not in battle, but in memory, in the dark, before Morgoths will shackled him. The hesitation lasts only a breath, but it's enough. Kalanan lunges, not for the heart, not for the eyes. For the scar, a pale, jagged line along Glorung's belly, where scales never grew back quite right. The dragon twists, his claws raking stone, but Narthank is already there, its tip kissing the old wound. The contact sends a shockwave through them both. The sword drinks deep, its runes blazing white-hot, and for the first time in centuries, Glorung screams. Not in rage, in terror. Somewhere beneath the fire and the fury, the elf and the dragon lock eyes, and in that moment, Kalanan sees it, the spark of something long buried. Not mercy, not regret, but the faint, flickering echo of a beast who once knew freedom. Then the cliff gives way beneath them, and the sky swallows them whole. The air shrieks as Glorung's claws rake through the space where Kalanan stood half a breath before. The elf's muscles scream with the effort, but Narthank's weight guides him, its edge flashing upward to meet the dragon's exposed throat. The blade parts scale and flesh with a sound like tearing silk, and Glorung's roar shakes the cliffs not just pain, but outrage. His blood, thick and molten, spatters the rocks between them, hissing as it eats into the stone like acid. For a heartbeat, the world hangs suspended. The dragon's golden eyes widen, his breath stuttering. No weapon should bite so deep. No mere elf should move so fast. And then, the fire comes, not the controlled bursts of before, but a raging inferno, a storm of flame meant to erase Kalanan from existence. Heat sears his eyebrows, his cloak bursting into cinders as he throws himself sideways, rolling behind a jagged outcrop. The rock glows red where the fire licks it, the air itself shimmering with distortion. Glorung's wings beat like thunder, stirring the smoke into choking spirals. You think one scratch makes you a dragon slayer. His voice slithers into Kalanan's skull, oily with mockery, but beneath the venom, something else pulses unease. The wound isn't closing, the blood isn't clotting. Narthank's song hums through the elf's bones, a melody of vengeance older than the mountains. Kalanan presses his palm to the overheated stone, counting the seconds between Glorung's labored breaths. The dragon's weakness isn't just flesh, it's his certainty, his unshakable belief that no creature, least of all this ragged elf, could ever match him. And now, as the first threads of doubt coil through his mind, his movements grow clumsy. His tail lashes wildly, scattering debris, his attacks less precise. A shadow flickers at the edge of vision, not Glorung's, but another. The ghostly smith from Gondolin's ruins stands amid the swirling ash, his fingers tracing the same runes that now glow along Narthank's fuller. His lips move soundless, but the message sears into Kalanan's thoughts like a brand. The blade remembers. Make him remember too. Glorung lunges again, jaws gaping, but this time, Kalanan doesn't flinch. He plants his feet, Narthank's point aimed not at scale or sinew, but at the faint, pulsing light deep within the dragon's maw, the fire sac, the source of his flame. The dragon's arrogance has blinded him to the truth. This isn't a battle of strength. It's a reckoning, and reckoning Kalanan thinks as he springs forward, has always been a two-edged sword. The air shimmers, warping like water under Glaurung's gaze. Suddenly, Kalanan isn't standing on broken cliffs. He's kneeling in a sunlit glade, his hands sticky with blood that isn't his. Around him, the bodies of his company lie still, their unblinking eyes accusing. The archer reaches for him, lips forming silent words. "You led us here." The vision is perfect. The grief is real. Narthank's hilt slips in his sweaty palm, its song muffled beneath the weight of imagined failure. A whisper cuts through the illusion, not words, but the memory of them. The dwarf's last grip on his forearm, the iron strength in those dying fingers. Make sure he feels it. The glade wavers, the corpses flicker, their edges blurring into smoke. Glaurung's trick isn't just cruelty, it's distraction. The dragon needs him uncertain, needs him slow. Kalanan's breath comes sharp as broken glass. He lets the vision pull him deeper, playing the fool, even as his fingers tighten around Narthank's grip. The sword thrums, a vibration traveling up his arm like a plucked bowstring. When Glaurung leans in, savoring his hesitation, the elf moves, not away. Forward, the dragon's golden eye widens a heartbeat too late. Narthank finds its mark with a sound like splitting stone, the blade drinking deep of fire and malice alike. Glaurung's scream isn't a roar, it's a shattering, the sound of 1,000 mirrors breaking as the illusion dissolves. Blood, thick and black as tar, wells around the steel, hissing where it meets the air. The dragon reels back, his wings beating wildly, but the sword stays buried, its runes pulsing with stolen fire. For a moment, they're locked in silence, elf and dragon, hunter and hunted. Then Glaurung laughs. It's a wet, choking sound, but the mockery in it is sharp as ever. One eye, he rasps. One drop in the ocean of my wrath. Kalanan wrenches the blade free, stepping back as the dragon's blood paints the rocks between them. "No," he says softly, "not a drop." He lifts Narthank, letting Glaurung see the truth in its gleaming edge. The first crack in the dam, the mountain trembles. Somewhere deep below, the earth answers. The earth itself seems to exhale as Glaurung's body strikes the ground, the impact sending tremors through the shattered cliffs. His wings, once vast enough to blot out the sun, now lie twisted and broken, their leathery membranes curling like burned parchment. Smoke rises from his nostrils in thin, sputtering wisps, no longer the raging inferno of before, but the dying embers of a fire starved of fuel. Narthank still hums in Kalanan's grip, its blade slick with dragon blood that sizzles where it drips onto the stone, etching tiny, glowing scars into the rock. For a moment, there's only silence. Then the wind shifts, carrying away the stench of sulfur and leaving behind something unexpected, the crisp, clean scent of rain. High above, the smoke-choked clouds part, and a single shaft of sunlight spills across the battlefield, illuminating the elf's battered form. His hands shake, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of what he's done. Glaurung's golden eye, dimming now, fixes on him one last time. There's no plea in that gaze, no surrender, only a strange, grudging respect. "You fight like the old ones," the dragon rasps, his voice fraying at the edges. Before the world learned to cower, a shudder runs through Glaurung's massive frame, scales flaking away like ash. His tail, coiled tight in agony, slowly unfurls, the tip brushing Kalanan's boot as if in some twisted farewell. Then, with a sigh that stirs the dust of countless battles, the dragon stills. The silence that follows is heavier than the mountain, thicker than the smoke. Even the wind holds its breath. Kalanan sinks to his knees, Narthank slipping from his fingers. The sword's song has faded, its purpose fulfilled. Around him, the air thrums with an almost sacred quiet, as if the land itself is remembering how to breathe without the shadow of wings overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a bird trills a sound that hasn't been heard here in centuries, but the victory feels hollow, not because the cost was too high, though it was. Not because the battle was too hard, though it nearly broke him, but because as Glorung's fire dims, Kalanan realizes something terrible and beautiful. The dragon was never just a monster. He was a prisoner, a masterpiece of ruin, yes, but forged in Morgoth's chains all the same. The elf reaches out, hesitating, then lays a hand on the dragon's snout. The scales are still warm. Somewhere beneath them, buried deep, he feels the faintest echo of a pulse, not life, not anymore, but the memory of it, the ghost of a creature who might have been something else, in another world. A shadow falls across him. Kalanan looks up, expecting ravens, or perhaps the first cautious scouts of his people. Instead, the sky is filled with wings of a different kind, great, sweeping, and feathered. The eagles of man, circle high above, their cries ringing clear as bells. They do not land. They do not need to. Their presence is a verdict, a benediction, a whisper from the heavens themselves. It is done. And with those unspoken words, the weight lifts, not all at once, but slowly, like dawn creeping across a battlefield. Kalanan bows his head, his fingers curling around Narthank once more. The sword's work is finished. His, it seems, is just beginning. The silence is deafening, not the absence of sound, but the weight of it, the way the wind hesitates to stir the ash at Kalanan's feet. How even the distant cry of an eagle seems muffled, as if the world itself is holding its breath. His fingers twitch against Narthank's hilt. The blades gleam, dulled by drying blood, both black and red. Dragon's blood, elf's blood. The lines blur now, sticky on his skin. A gust finally comes, skimming over the battlefield like a ghost, lifting strands of his hair and carrying with it the scent of scorched earth and something else, something old. It slithers through the ruins, rustling the bones of fallen warriors, whispering between the cracks in Glorung's shattered scales. Morgoth's voice isn't in the wind, not truly, but his fingerprints are everywhere. The Dark Lord's other creations stir in their pits and prisons, sensing the void left by their brother's fall. Somewhere beneath the earth, a Balrog shifts in its chains. Somewhere beyond the mountains, wolves with eyes like smoldering coals lift their muzzles to the air. Kalanan's knees ache against the stone, but he doesn't rise. Not yet. The victory tastes like ashes, not because it wasn't earned. Every scar on his body screams that it was, but because he knows, with a certainty that settles deep in his bones, that this isn't the end. Glorung was never the source of the darkness, only its sharpest weapon. A shadow flickers at the edge of his vision. The spectral smith stands once more amid the wreckage, his form translucent as mist, his fingers tracing the cracks in Narthank's blade. No words pass between them this time, none are needed. The sword's song is spent, its purpose fulfilled, but the elf's is not. The first raindrop strikes his brow, cool and startling. Then another, and another. The storm doesn't rage, It weeps, washing the blood from his hands, from the rocks, from the broken land itself. Kalanan tilts his face to the sky, letting the water mingle with the salt on his cheeks. When he opens his eyes again, the ghost is gone. Only the sword remains, its runes faint but still visible beneath the grime. He picks it up, not as a warrior this time, but as a mourner. The blade is lighter now, as if some great weight has lifted from it, or perhaps from him. The whispers on the wind grow louder, but they no longer sound like threats. They sound like names, the fallen, the forgotten, the ones who will never see the new dawn creeping over the horizon. Somewhere in the distance, a single green shoot pushes through the cracked earth, its leaves unfurling toward the rain. Small, fragile, alive, Kalanan sheathes Narthank and turns his back on the dragon's corpse. The road ahead is long, and the shadows are gathering, but for the first time since the fire came, the darkness doesn't feel endless. The survivors' fires flicker like scattered stars across the ruined valley, their glow feeble against the vast, uncaring dark. Kalanan steps into the circle of light, Narthank strapped across his back, its once bright runes now smudged with soot and shadow. A child barely tall enough to reach his elbow gasps and points. Then the murmurs begin, rippling through the crowd like wind through dry grass. The dragon slayer. The one who walked into fire and walked back out. They part before him, their faces gaunt beneath the grime, eyes too wide for the tentative hope dawning there. Someone presses a cup into his hands. The smell of mead, thin and sour, cuts through the lingering stench of sulfur. A woman with singed braids begins a victory chant, her voice trembling at first, then swelling as others join. The sound should lift him. It doesn't. The cup's weight feels alien, the cheers like echoes from another world. His gaze drifts past the firelight, past the makeshift barricades, to the jagged peaks where Glorung first emerged. First, the word lodges in his throat like a bone. A hand touches his shoulder, Irian, her healer's fingers still stained with the blood of those who didn't live to see this night. You've given us more than hope, she murmurs. You've given us time. Kalanan turns the cup slowly, watching the mead catch the firelight. Time for what? The question isn't bitter, just weary. To rebuild before the next storm, to bury our dead before more come. He sets the drink down untouched. The blade at his back hums, not the triumphant song of before, but a low, warning thrum. The chanting falters. The elders exchange glances. They know, as he does, the truth written in the scorch marks on the horizon. Glorung was never the end. Only the beginning. Morgoth's forges still burn, his armies still stir, and now, with his mightiest weapon broken, the Dark Lord's wrath will be anything but subtle. Silence spreads thick as spilled ink. Kalanan draws Narthank, its tip scraping the earth. The steel no longer gleams. It hungers. This was never just about one dragon, he says, and the words taste like prophecy. It was about proving they can bleed. He lifts the sword, letting the firelight race along its edge. So let them come. Let them learn what happens when light stops running. A gust howls through the valley, scattering embers like fleeing spirits. Somewhere in the dark, a wolf answers, not with a howl, but a laugh. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest edges of history, turning blood and fire into stories told by flickering hearthlight. The tale of Glorung doesn't end with his fall, it ripples outward, carried on the tongues of bards, and the hushed whispers of those who still remember the weight of dragon wings against the sky. The elf's name, once shouted in defiance across battlefields, now lingers at the edges of memory, half lost like a footprint in shifting sand. Yet every child knows the shape of his victory. They trace it in the way the wind carries the scent of rain after a storm, in the way new grass pushes through scorched earth. Hope, it seems, is harder to bury than bones. But legends are not just about what's remembered. They're about what's forgotten too. The cracks in the story, the gaps where the truth twists into something softer, safer. No one speaks of how the sword Narthanc screamed when it tasted dragon blood, or how the ground trembled long after Glorung's heart stilled, as if the earth itself feared what came next. No one mentions the way Kalanan's hands shook when he washed the blackened scales from his skin, or how the first night after the battle was so quiet it ached. And beneath it all, beneath the songs and the sighs, Angband breathes. Its forges never cool, its chains never rust. Deep in the dark, where even the bravest dare not tread, something listens to the echoes of Glorung's fall. Something older, something hungrier. It doesn't stir yet, not fully, but it dreams, and in its dreams the world burns differently. Not with the reckless fury of a weapon unleashed, but with the cold, patient certainty of a hand reaching for a blade it knows will never break. The elves tell their children one day the shadow will pass. The dwarves grumble into their ale that shadows always return, but the wind, if anyone bothers to listen, carries neither comfort nor warning. Only the sound of distant wings, beating a rhythm too slow for mortal hearts to follow. The age of fire may be over, but the age of embers has only just begun.